you're not in shape physically, then you can't work the 20-hour days that it takes to be extreme. Hard work leads to smart work. Smart work leads to what I call the apex of the triangle, which is focused work. There's a reason I'm not on social media. There's a reason why I don't go check the news every 5 minutes, because it doesn't make me whole. I only do things that make me whole. It's just taking a couple next steps forward, trusting that the regret you feel is only worse if you quit, if you give up.
All right, so I want everybody to, whatever you're doing right now, whether you're, driving down the road and you're about to meet a prospect, or you're about to pick up the phone to call a potential customer, or maybe you're at the gym wondering how your day's going to look like with the sales appointments you have, or maybe you're walking into a boardroom right now and you're trying to finalize the deal. Well, right now with what's going on, maybe you're trying to finalize the deal on Zoom or WhatsApp or Skype with everything. Wherever you're at, I want you to ask yourself this question and really think about it. What does it actually take to be a top 1% salesperson in your industry? Okay. The salesperson who makes all the money. Okay. The salesperson who gets any promotion they want. In fact, they turn down promotions they don't want. They have all the respect of management and leadership in their company. The salesperson who leads by example because they outsell everybody else. Well, my next guest is going to help share their thoughts about what that takes. And let me give you a small taste of this gentleman's background. He is an international business strategist, speaker, author, and extreme athlete. We're going to talk about that. And his consulting firm solves complex marketing and business strategy problems for savvy companies all over the world. Dow Jones calls his Edgy Conversations blog one of the top sales sites on the internet. It's read by over 30 million people around the world. And the Wall Street Journal praised his writing as one of the most influential sales and business blogs. His insights have been published in Business Insider, Forbes, Vanity Fair, CNBC, and countless other news, radio, podcast, and TV outlets. He's been profiled in Businessweek, Inc. magazine, BBC, Fox News, The Today Show, and Business Insider, and has been the featured guest on dozens of radio programs and has published hundreds of articles on progressive business strategy. He even wrote a book called Edgy Conversations that he says accidentally, we're going to have to find out, became a worldwide bestseller. And he continues to share his insights from the stage as a keynote speaker and on his blog and podcast. Now, most days, you're going to find him heads down working on breakthrough strategies for his clients at Edgy Ink, a highly focused invite-only business strategy execution company based out of Silicon Valley. Boy, I love those taxes out there. Please help me welcome to the show, Mr. Dan Waldschmidt. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Every time I hear that introduction, it's just a big mouthful, isn't it? It's bonkers.
I know. I'm just being cheeky with you on those taxes in California. Yeah. I guess you pay for the beautiful weather. So, hey,
I don't live there. I don't live there, my friend. I live in Greenville, South Carolina, where we have Jesus and guns. So, and no taxes, and I just work out of California. So,
okay, I love it, man. I love it. All right, so hey, excited to have you on here, and I love talking with professionals, with trainers who understand human behavior, who understand how to use principles and techniques for salespeople that work with human behavior rather than against human behavior. It's such a unique difference in our ability and our closing skills. So, thanks for joining me. Now, let's do this. I want to dive right into your story. Let's not wait. Give our listeners really a feel for your background and how you arrived at this point in your life where you're one of the elite authorities on leadership, on business, on sales. Maybe tell us a little bit more about your background and how this started for you. Like, where did you learn all these skills?
Yes. I think it comes down to this idea of curiosity. I mean, at 19 years old, I dropped out of college for the first time because I'm an overachiever. I actually dropped out twice. So the first time I dropped out of seminary, and I was the youngest sales manager in the history of this company called Sears. And I was selling treadmills, and I figured out, how to sell treadmills, and it was amazing. And then they realized at 19, oops, you can't be a sales manager if you're 19. Anyways, that started down this trickle effect of selling air conditioning systems and making millions of dollars doing that. And then thought I need to get my shit together and go back to college and finish, because my mom, I had one of those moms who said, you'll never be somebody unless you graduate. One thing led to another. Exactly. Started selling technology. And to be candid with you, there was this chip on my shoulder.
Okay.
That said, you're not good enough, because that's how I was raised. You're not smart enough. You're a loser. And I thought, what if I could learn what I need to know? And so I got really curious. The first book that made an impact on my life, for sure. I'd probably read 40 books on sales, everything from Carnegie talking about how to meet people and influence people. I'm actually an introvert, so I'm not a backslapping sort of like high five, let's go drink a beer. I don't want to drink a beer with you. I don't. I just want you to buy my shit. I want to make a lot of money. I want to make you happy. And I want to go home at night. I don't want any fancy closing lines or pitches. I just want to do my shit and be amazing.
Yeah.
And so when I read David Sandler's book, You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar, that began the beginning of satisfying my intellectual curiosity. And then 20 years later now, I've sold, my firm and I have generated $19 billion worth of revenue for clients as big as Turkish Airlines and Panasonic and Microsoft and people like that, just small Silicon Valley companies that you might use their products every day and you just don't even know what their name is. Sure. And it's funny because I read this thing you say about me, best-selling books, all these things, and I still think there's a piece of me that's still broken inside that says you're not as good as you could be, and you need to keep growing, and you need to keep learning.
You still have the chip on your shoulder. You still have the chip on your shoulder.
It's right here.
And that's what you have to have. Now, I was on your website earlier. Let's talk a little bit more about this book, Edgy Conversations, How Ordinary People Achieve Outrageous Success. Who did you write this for, and why?
Myself. I was raised very uniquely, very Christian parents, no TV in my home, all 18 years growing up, not one TV in my home, had to practice the piano an hour a day, had to read a book a day. So at 12 years old, I'm reading my dad's Blackstone law books, right? So I'm a bit of a nut job. I had a bit of a weird, like Tiger Woods was raised to play golf. I was kind of raised to do business, right? Although my parents are still upset I'm not a minister somewhere preaching from a pulpit. But I began to realize, like, I don't have any rich uncles. I don't have a degree. I have 5 years of college, but like no degree, what is it that is inside of someone that they shouldn't win, but they end up winning? And then there's some people who are like, they've got the degree, they've got the money, they've got the beautiful partner, and they just underperform. They always underperform. And I thought, what is really going on? Not let's look at like behind the scenes. How do some people make it? And that became the genesis for what became a huge international bestseller. I wrote it to me. Yeah. And it's still a story to myself, to remind myself.
I love that. And we're going to dive deep into that book here in just a minute. Now, you talk a lot about how the idea of quote unquote closing is flawed in today's marketplace. Tell us more about what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, there's a whole genre, and it's again, I'm not calling out too many names, but it's this male machismo based. I've got the cojones to make you buy something you don't want to buy, and that is both impractical, stupid, and fraudulent behavior. Right. And so for all of those people who have type A personalities and are trying to sell you some bullshit about 7 closing lines, you should immediately run the opposite direction. Right. So closing is what happens at the end. It's like telling someone, just do it. We're not going to try, just do. What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
Trying is what you do until it gets done. It's like watching a baby. They don't just run. First, they stumble and fall, and then they walk, and then they end up running. So closing is what happens at the end. It's like the natural manifestation of having your ideal client profiled and having the message right and providing so much value that they can't say no to you. Closing is just it's like the sunrise.
Closing
Yeah.
It's true.
It just is what happens.
Yeah, it's just the next logical step for them to take action and solve the problems that they just told you they had from your questioning ability. The close is not one at the end with, like you said, cheesy closing techniques or puppy dog closes or the option close. It's one in the engagement part of that conversation where you're asking the right questions at the right time in that conversation that's allowing them to discover what their true problems are, what caused those problems, like what are the root cause of the problems, and then how are those problems actually affecting them, right? That's what the sales made, because they start to realize that they have problems that maybe they didn't even know they had, right? Or maybe they didn't know how bad the problem was, but your questioning ability caused them to start thinking, whoa, this could be bad if we don't do anything about this. The very end closing is just simply saying, where do you want to go from here? How do you want to proceed from here? It's just a logical step to solve their problems. I love what you just said there.
I was very frustrated early on. So Gittimer was a very prevalent sales trainer at the time, and doesn't live too far from me now. And I'm not picking on him, but some of his tactics I thought were gimmicky. He would, I was selling heating and air conditioning. By the way, I went from no experience to selling $20 million worth of heating and air conditioning in just a couple of years, right? Became very successful at it, and then moved on to something else. But he would say his training was, have your daughter or son leave a voicemail for the person who you're trying to get a hold of and go, hi, my daddy's trying to reach you. Number one, I'm 21. I don't have a kid, Yeah, and what's happened is we have sacrificed hard work and dedication for this crack cocaine of another tactic, and it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. If you compare yourself to an athlete, they don't just plan for the final 2 minutes. They don't just plan for the last 3 seconds on the clock, I'm going to make the shot. They practice to play the whole game. And we've got a crop of salespeople who have been told, oh, just get on Snapchat. Oh, just use LinkedIn Navigator. Or just use this or that, and you'll be fine. And we've abandoned telling them the hard truth. This is, this is a professional job. Act like it. Plan for it. Prepare for it.
Selling is collaborative. It's you working with them to solve their problems, to get them out of status quo. Most sales training out there, like you just talked about, some of the old school stuff, hence the show Closers Are Losers, because if you're still using old school, outdated closing and sales techniques, you are losing sales that you could be making, like you said. Those techniques actually trigger sales resistance. So the reason why you're getting so many objections is because it triggers resistance when you say things like that, because people view them as manipulating them to try to buy something rather than you're there to find and help solve their problems. It's a completely different, it's not adversarial, it's collaborative.
What you said is interesting too, because if for anyone who has got a friend or a partner in your life, you've got that one person who I'll be saying, hey, I'm going to have coffee with Jeremy. Why don't you tag along? And they'll meet and they'll be like, I like that guy. They won't know anything about you, Jeremy, but there's something that triggers inside that I connect with that person. Now, conversely, you'll bring your partner or friend to meet somebody and they'll go, oh, that guy's a douche, or I don't like that person. And you're like, oh, I was actually going to do a deal with them, and it triggers something inside you. What did I miss? Now, what you said is key. We do these things that are lazy and manipulative, and inside the gut reaction of our target person is visceral. It's subconscious. It's automatic. It's already pre-programmed, where they immediately go, I don't like this person. I don't like feeling manipulated, and they push back. And we're too lazy to avoid doing that sloppiness.
Selling becomes so easy when you learn skills and techniques that work with human behavior to get them to pull you in, rather than traditional selling techniques teach you to push and they push back, right? It's just the law of physics, right? You push, they're going to push back. Now, you talk about a lot, I watch you on YouTube, that everything you think you know about success is wrong. Elaborate on that.
So I think just being open to consider that opens you up to the possibility of finding out what you don't know. I ran an experiment. In 2006, I was CEO of a company that I would eventually sell to a publicly traded company. And it was the beginning of this probably C-suite journey that I've been on now for a decade plus. And what's interesting is I started writing blogs. This is back before blogs were cool. And I would try to write the exact opposite. So if someone said carry business cards, I would say don't carry business cards. If they said black, I said white. If they said left, I said right. And what's interesting to me is I was able to write 20, 30, 40 powerful arguments that people were like, oh, you bring up a good thought. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm a nobody. I am literally challenging just by rote definition exactly what you think, and you're buying into my bullshit. Like, how convinced am I that your bullshit is actually right if you're buying into my stuff? That began my thought experience that most of us, through a lack of curiosity or just believing what we're told, we accept all these things as fact, and maybe, just maybe, they're not actually facts, that maybe you should expand and be a little more curious and figure out for yourself what really works.
Yeah, what's the biggest problem a person has in their life? It's the problem that they don't know they have. Because if you don't know you have the problem, then you don't know actually how to solve or do anything about it. It's the biggest thing. When I speak at events with salespeople, I simply ask them, what's the biggest problem that you have? What's the biggest problem in sales? What's the biggest problem in sales? People are like, oh, this or that, like crazy things. I'm like, no, it's the problem.
Not enough leads.
It's not enough leads. My prospects don't have enough money. No, it's the problem that you don't know you have. Because if you don't know what your problem is, then how do you do anything to change it, right? Once you know what the problem is and you figure that out, then whose responsibility is it to change your situation and do something about it? Now, let's talk more about your book, okay? Maybe you could briefly outline for our listeners you talk about 4 qualities that sales people need to have to really achieve sales greatness or become awesome, as I hear you say. What are those?
So I came to some conclusions. So I'll fly through this in a minute. I came to some conclusions, but before I tell you the conclusions, I want to tell you, I had 2 neurosurgeons on my team full time to walk me through what's happening physically and chemically that we don't even know subconsciously, right? So that was happening. At the same time, I was dissecting over 1,000 stories that happened one by one. People were sending me, and then 10 become 200, and 200 becomes 2,000 of people who are unlikely winners, and I'm digging into what's behind the scenes. So that terminated to 4 principles. I think I actually got a tattoo on one of my signs that says live extreme, because I thought extreme was the only quality, but it's 4 qualities that I saw demonstrated time and time again. And it is extreme behavior. Okay. And so and I think that goes to work. People say work smart. You don't know how to work smart. If you're starting out, you don't know how to be smart. You only know how to work hard. Hard work leads to smart work. Smart work leads to what I call the apex of the triangle, which is focused work. If you look at a violinist, they don't just work smart, they focus, where the fingers touch and the vibrato work. Yeah. Exactly. So extreme behavior. You have to be willing to do more, to go further, to go farther. And by the way, this is actually not this machismo chest thumping that you do in public. This is that when you get in your car at the beginning of the day and you go, I don't know how I'm going to make it, but yet you persist. There's something magical about that moment where you just find within yourself that capacity to perform. So extreme behavior. By the way, if it's not crazy enough, anyone else can do it. So do the thing that no one else can do, and it's a little bit crazy. Number 2, disciplined activity. And this is about fitness. I see more salespeople go off the rails, Jeremy, not because they don't know a sales process, because they're financially unfit, their relationships are unfit, they're physically unfit. They're so out of whack. They're waiting to get lucky. They're waiting for everything to align rather than planning to be disciplined, right? You may say, Dan, why are you, fat shaming me? I'm not fat shaming you. What I'm saying is if you're not in shape physically, right? This is hard, but let's talk about it. If you're not in shape physically, then you can't work the 20-hour days that it takes to be extreme. Let's talk about financial fitness. If you're not in shape financially, you can't make the sacrifice you need to make to get to where you want to be. And if you're not willing to sacrifice for what you want becomes that sacrifice.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and then of course, giving so much value.
So you're just disciplined on a daily basis. You know exactly what you're going to do. You're not winging it in life. You are structured and disciplined. I love that.
And I'll tell you, it's like, oh, well, I don't see results. Hey, you know what? We don't doubt the power of the volcano because it hasn't spewed. Yeah. we don't say, oh, that volcano is worthless. Nothing's happening. No, it is the full power and the strength and the might is weaponized inside that volcano. And Pompeii, we saw in hours, an entire part of the world was gone, vanquished by the power of the. So do not doubt the power of discipline simply because you have not seen it erupt yet. And so there's discipline, and then there's giving. And there's giving so much value it no longer makes sense. A lot of what we do in sales, I write, is not giving, it's trading. Trade your email for a download, trade a visit for a commitment, and it's trading. And there's nothing wrong with trading. It's a great system of business, but it's not giving. Imagine if you could give so much value that people couldn't live without you.
Yeah.
Think about that. What would it take? And then the Y in Edgy is being human, and we spell it with a Y, human, instead of edge, because human. And it's how can it be human? And look, people have bad days. People have good days. People act irrationally, right? People are people. It's the beautiful part about being human is that we have flaws, but these flaws make us great. My ability to be obsessive compulsive drives my wife fucking crazy because I can go days without eating or sleeping or talking to her. And at the same time, that same level of obsession, right, gets me the business deal or gets me the prize running an ultra marathon. And it's this humanness. This humanness that we have to tap into and stop trying to pretend like we're perfect. Stop trying to take these pictures on Instagram that we've got the perfect booty and the great life and the fancy cars and just say, look, I'm not where I want to be and I'm a little bit fucked up, but you better not doubt my resolve to figure it out because I will get there. I will get there. And instead, we've got a whole crop of sales trainers and experts who are fakes. They're talking about how they've made it, and they make $50,000 a year trying to sell a course telling you how to make $1 million, and they've not done it themselves.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many influencers out there. You have no idea. Salespeople that maybe made 100 or 200,000 a year. That's great, but then they're going to teach you all these skills to make 7 figures as a salesperson when they never did that themselves. And that's where most of the quote unquote sales gurus actually fall into place. Like if I look at their jobs when they were salespeople, how much they made wasn't that much. Some of them weren't even top salesperson in their companies, but now they're a guru.
Or they worked at Xerox or IBM or something like that. Nothing wrong with those big brands. They're amazing companies led by amazing people, most of them. But the machine is what drives this. Now go stand up on your own. Do it when the wind is against your face. Do it when the water is against your back. Now stand tall.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's a little different.
Let's talk about, you're an extreme athlete. I love this. Can you describe maybe some of the maybe crazy things you've done and maybe how extreme sports really correlates to preparation to be, let's say, an elite sales professional?
Well, my first 100-miler was where you are, I think, right? Arkansas. I ran the Arkansas 100. It was my first. It's one of the oldest 100-mile races in the world. And I just was talking to friends. I thought, what's the most crazy thing? So for me, because I feel insecure, because there's a part of me inside my soul that says, you're worthless, Dan. You're never going to be good enough. To fight those demons. To fight that depression, to fight that feeling of insecurity, I put myself in situations where failure seems almost guaranteed. And then when I can persist, I come out and for a small moment in time, I feel as if I'm whole, as if by breaking myself down, I've built myself back up. And I'll tell you what you learn is humility. You learn how easy it is to be broken. And so I ran the Arkansas 100 was my first one. I've run a couple other, a bunch of other, I shouldn't say a bunch of other ultra marathons. And then last year, I was the 10th person in the world to do the Everest thing. And, at 29,009 feet it's no, you're falling asleep on your feet. It's no easy task at all. But I think for anyone, some people say, what do you think about when you're running, or what do you think about when you're doing this? I say a couple things. Number one, don't die. And then number two behind it is sometimes just take another step. You can get to wherever you want to be. It doesn't matter how big the goal is. And I'm not some motivational speaker, but the truth is it's just one more step in that direction. That's all you need to do.
Yeah, I love that. It's the extreme discipline. You're just disciplined to take the next step and the next step and next step. Now, let's talk a little bit about this. So everything that's going on, COVID-19, all that stuff, what is the reason why so many buying decisions are stalling in the marketplace right now?
Well, I think if I gave you one size fits all, it'd be hard. But let me make some assessments. One, I bought a company right in the middle of COVID, 300 employees. It was kind of a little weird to do that. Haven't even been able to travel and see everyone because of COVID. But I'll tell you, one of the reasons why is that there's not been enough value created up front, and it's a little bit like the that phrase, when the tide goes out, you see who's not wearing any shorts. That sort of thing.
It's not prepared.
It's not been prepped. It's not been prepared. There's not been value created, and so what happens is when there's a bit of insecurity or nervousness in the market, everything gets paralyzed. Everything gets stopped.
Well, you're right, because
this goes back to discipline. If you follow the steps of your sales process, of your value creation, economic factors, technology factors will disrupt you, but they're much, much, much less disruptive
for sure
when you've sold with discipline.
One thing we have to understand is that most companies, strategically, large companies think 2 or 3 years out. With everything going on right now, they're thinking 90 days out. So their projections are completely different. So you as a sales professional, you have to be even better in the game, because it's easy to get lazy in selling when there's economic expansion that we've had the last 4 or 5 years, when it's just easier to sell. But in times of, like you said, economic contraction that we're going through now, maybe we haven't even hit yet, every shortcoming you, the salesperson, has is only going to be magnified. And it's going to result in lost sales for them and the company if they don't learn the right skills. So you have to learn the right questions to ask in that conversation that build a gap. It builds a gap from your price point, your solution, to where they really want to be at. That gap has to be so large in their mind because of problems that your price seems like pennies for you to be able to actually solve their problem. Okay. If you don't know the right questions to ask, that gap becomes much smaller, and your price looks large compared to, I don't know if they can actually get me the results that I want. So your questioning ability creates that larger gap if you're good, if you know the right skills, where even in times of economic contraction, companies still move forward because they realize they have problems that you helped them find they didn't even know about. Or maybe they didn't know how bad their problem was, or the consequences if they don't do anything about solving it. So I wanted to ask you, what's a good question that a rep can ask in a sales conversation that helps build urgency in that sale to really prevent that from happening? Your thoughts?
My go-to question, and this is my number one in the history of asking questions that I say, is, what makes you say that? And so almost anything, I don't have budget. What makes you say that? I don't see the value that you're here. What makes you say that? I don't know that we can meet your timeline. What makes you say that? And what this does is it begins, again, it's not a silver bullet, but it begins to put you on the journey where you understand not what they're saying, but why.
What their meaning, right? You're getting behind their why. So what that is, we would consider that like a clarifying question, because you're clarifying what they actually even mean by that. Because them saying we don't have the budget for this could mean 20 different things. If you just assume because your last prospect said we don't have the budget, that must mean the same thing, and you go into objection handling mode, you could be missing it completely. So I love that. What makes you say that? I think that's perfect.
Ask it a couple times too. What's interesting is it's not a one-time. Do this with your partner. Do this with a friend. It's like my wife. She calls me, "When are you coming home?" Well, that seems like a simple question, but we all know that's a loaded question. What she really wants to know is, are you going to be home by 5 to pick up Johnny from school? And so it's if I go and say, well, I'm leaving at 6, she's going to be like, oh, and she's mad. Why are you mad? You just asked when I was coming home. Now, but if I switch that and say, well, what makes you ask? And she says, well, I need someone to pick up this, Johnny. Oh, well, would it be helpful if I picked him up? Yes. Fantastic. I can do that. And now I've taken a question where I've just solved. And that happens to all of us many times a day. And we don't think about applying it to our customers, but it makes a profound impact.
Okay. So I love that, Dan. Now I want to ask you, let's talk a little bit about technology. In your opinion, how is technology impacted sales and really the modern selling process specifically?
So I love using sales technology, sales tools to help me do my job better, either apply more focus or scale to what I'm doing. Now I think it's a matter of having a core group of tools that you use, to build that discipline into your schedule. And so whether it's HubSpot, there's actually a CRM/address book called Close, CLOZE.
Yeah.
CLOZ is probably one of the best address book CRMs I've ever seen in my life. But again, don't learn any equity or have any reason. I love cool technology that allows me to scale, do my job. But so think about this. There's thousands and thousands of technology out there. Someone has faced the same problem as you and is probably building a solution to help you do it. By the way, a little curiosity. How do I do? Go to Google. It's your best friend. How do I do this? Technology to do this. App to do this. There's apps to send videos. There's apps to send GIFs. There's technology that lets you know when a client is, silently stalking you on your website. There's no excuse anymore for not being organized.
Yeah, we live in the information age, 100%. Now, let's talk about a few more questions, because our salespeople love it when I bring on a guest. It gets really good questions. That last question, very simple question, yet very powerful. It's very important. It wasn't a complex question, but very powerful when used the right way. Good job. What's one of the most important questions besides that one that every salesperson really should ask their prospect?
So one of my favorite all-time questions, besides digging in and saying, I have a series of questions that I like using where when I'm in the middle of a conversation, I'll say something like this: does that make sense? I guess these are traditionally under the trial close sort of category, perhaps. But does this make sense? I'll say something like, right? Okay. Is that cool? So often in a conversation, we're talking back and forth here, the salespeople think it's like a one-way thing. And so they'll give you these 17 paragraphs of information. And I think one of the ways to get people to come with you, especially on this journey, is to say, hey, time out. Does that make sense? And so I think that if you think about, and I'm sure Jeremy, you've got lots of training on the different type of qualifying questions and situational questions and pain questions and all of that, and critical events and things like that. But the transitions in and out of those different types of questions are something that I find, Jeremy, many of my sales teams lack. It's that polish, it's that discipline that helps you smoothly through. Does that make sense?
I love that. You're asking what we would call checking for agreement questions, right? Especially in the presentation. John, are you with me on that? Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? Are we on the same page, right? Do you see how that could possibly help you? Yeah, I love those. Checking for agreement. They seem so simple when you say them, yet most salespeople, it's like they don't even know they exist, right? But they're so powerful.
So focused on have to get the whole pitch out, and something I'll do too that's a little extreme, and again, it goes along with edgy, is sometimes if I'm in a meeting, I'll be like, if I see people are tuned out or toned out, or even in the room, their heads are on their devices, I'll be like, so listen, unless you're tweeting that you're looking at the best looking man in the world, I'm guessing that, you're probably zoned out and I'm boring the shit out of you. And so people are like, oh no, then now they put down their device and now they're talking. Or many times when I'm in a meeting, I'll be like, so listen, I'm feeling like whatever I just said was like Swahili, right over your head. So what part of that did you get? I'm guessing a small portion. Tell me what you got. What did you understand from what I said? And get them to repeat back to me.
Back to re-engage, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're in a presentation, right? Especially if you're on stage, you're training, or you're in a boardroom and you're meeting. Like, you have to ask those checking for agreement questions, because they keep the pulse of your audience, whether that's one person or 10 people or 1,000. It keeps the pulse of what's going on. I love Such a simple question, but so powerful, so psychologically persuasive if used in the right way. I love that. Now, let's talk about this. It's, the last question I've got for you today. It's no secret, obviously, it's been a tough year for a lot of salespeople, a lot of business owners, depending on the industry, right? If you're Zoom, you're doing great. But on your website, you say you've struggled with depression. Okay, and that's you've made yourself a little bit more vulnerable by saying that, which you're human, right? You practice what you preach. Talk a little bit about that. Give our listeners maybe some coping advice based on your experiences in life.
So running is my coping advice. It literally saved my life. Yeah, truly. Yeah, and depression is one of those weird things where, look, a lot of people struggle from it. A lot of C-level successful people struggle with it. They feel insecure. They feel like they don't deserve their job. They feel like maybe they got lucky, or a series of things converge to make them successful, and they don't. I guess we call that imposter syndrome. But the reality is that there is a cure for these things, and for me. I feel it within myself, like consuming me, and I just have to go run. For me, when I push the limits of my physical exhaustion, I find that the tank for emotional sadness and that emotional kind of a lack of perspective, true perspective, it goes away. I also have some rules. One of the rules I remind myself when I'm feeling super low is don't make any important decisions in the next 24 hours. And, I get just as down as other people, suicidal thoughts. And you may be thinking, dude, you've made millions of dollars and you got all these businesses and you travel and speak. And like, how is that possible? I don't know. I can't explain it, but there are low lows. And in those moments, you just have to remind yourself. For me, I think, look, it is a law of nature that the sun will come out. It just comes out. It comes out in the morning. No matter how dark things are or what you're going through, at some point, the skies will part and the sun will shine and you will feel better. And so when you're in these dark moments, we don't make decisions in these times because we can't see perspective. It's too dark. I don't know if I'm running into a tree or if it's a stop sign or if it's a large person. So I have to safeguard myself. Another thing is, look, no matter any 100-mile race, you're going to spend some time in the dark. You're going to be running through the night. And it's just depressing. You're tired and you're cranky and you're sore. And it's just taking a couple next steps forward, trusting that the regret you feel is only worse if you quit, if you give up. I mean, and by the way, that means giving up on life. That means giving up on second chances. And there's a lot of salespeople I see who are in a funk, one, because they've created problems for themselves. They have not been financially or fit. And then two, they let the world consume them. There's a reason I'm not on social media. There's a reason why I don't go check the news every 5 minutes, because it doesn't make me whole. I only do things that make me whole. You might go, dude, that's crazy. I get it's crazy. But if I want to be an elite high performer, that's what I have to do. And maybe you would feel better if you weren't consumed by all the negative people that you've accidentally shoved into your life.
I love that. Hey, Dan, I can't thank you enough for being on here. I love this episode with you, really opening up the playbook, talking about human behavior. I love that. Where can our listeners learn more about you and your training?
You can go to danwaldschmidt.com and find out, more about me and my book and my running and all that wackiness. Sure. Love to have you.
I love that. We'll put the website here. Dan, how do you pronounce your name? Waldschmidt.
Waldschmidt.com. Yeah, you got it. You said it earlier.
I got it, baby. I got
Dan
from Arkansas, but we don't know how to pronounce names down there sometimes. That's where I was raised, live in Missouri now. Close, we're neighbors. All right, so Dan,
there you go.
Great having you on here, and we're going to have you back. I love it.
If you're serious about joining the top 1%, I mean the top 1%, and you want to experience more training content just like this, click the links right over there. Right over there, they're exactly what you need to see next. You see, I release new episodes featuring top salespeople and sales authorities, multiple six-figure, high six-figure, even seven-figure earners every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday every single week at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you're new here, do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button right below, and join our new Facebook group, Sales Revolution. You see, it's free, and there's a link in the description below just for you. We put it there for you. Finally, I make posts on Facebook and Instagram each and every day with more tips and training, so be sure and follow me and turn on your notifications. So make a comment in the first 7 minutes to any of my latest posts, share this episode, and there's a very real chance that you're gonna win some killer prizes. And here's the thing, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be like everyone else. Get into the game. Join the sales revolution. Stay active, get involved, learn the right skills, and we will show you how to take your life and income to a level that most only dream about. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.